welcome back to episode 3 of Gongaga Radio. My name is Max.
And I'm Kevin, your hosts for all of everything Final Fantasy VII hype in the lead up to the Rebirth launch in a couple of months now.
Yeah, Remake, Rebirth, and what we assume is going to be a reunion. We'll see about that.
Yeah, the post Rebirth launch podcasts are going to have a lot of mouth foaming and tinfoil hat theorizing, I'm sure.
Amen. I mean, this is a game we've been gushing about since it came out in the 90s, so it's only natural that it continues on for years.
Very true.
But in this episode, I mean, we're talking about, again, I mean, the focal point, seemingly the pinnacle of every conversation involved in this game is how do you go about the process of remaking what could be argued as the greatest twist in all of gaming, right?
It's true.
The greatest.
Yeah, but spoilers if it needs to be said.
Right.
If you're coming in completely fresh to Final Fantasy VII and have still managed to find this podcast,
Turn this off now.
Yeah,
this episode. Finish the game and then get back.
Just as an aside, I want it to be said that if you've made it this far and you are anticipating Rebirth's release and you don't know anything about the plot up until where we've made it in Remake, I am so sincerely envious of you. Because,
yes.
you got a hell of a ride ahead of you. And that's sincerely impressive, especially in the spoiler culture of just today on the internet. I would assume it's unescapable. And it's just such a part of, the cultural consciousness around video games at that time.
Video games in general, yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's almost, if you're interested in the Final Fantasy remake, it's it's a very natural step to try to go to the internet, see what other people are thinking about it, and the fact that you'll be able to avoid that spoiler is
No, I see web articles that just call it out immediately.
Yeah.
No shame. But I mean, it is, Snape kills Dumbledore levels of just memed on at this point. It is the spoiler. Dictionary definition.
Even watching some of Max's videos now, even in recent months, it's just he'll kind of lean away from spoiling it for anyone, just on the off chance, which I find very interesting.
And I respect it. It honestly is the type of thing where you play it for the first time without knowing, and it is just a punch to the gut because nothing had done stuff like that before.
Yeah.
We've talked a bit. I know I've played it. I don't think you have, about Chrono Trigger. And Chrono Trigger plays around with that, but it's a different kind of approach in a different situation. We'll stop beating around the bush. Final spoiler warning, but we're talking, of course, about the death of Aerith, as killed by Sephiroth in the Temple of the Ancients.
Yeah, I mean, losing as a kid, man, losing the only healer, right? The only healer in the game. You're just all right, well, I guess potions are going to be useful
It's
now.
true. Aerith was locked into my party because I just oh, hey, her magic stats are killer, so you're my mage healer. And then I was just Tifa, you're drafted. It's time to step it up.
No, it'll be extremely interesting because, I mean, the idea is to keep that scene fresh while keeping it honest to itself, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it is very dependent on how they want to deal with this multiverse situation, right? With Zack still being alive in one timeline and the group not being alive in one timeline, I guess, is kind of... Was that the takeaway of that scene, seeing Barrett and Tifa under the blankets?
That's definitely the impression that I got. And this will be its own episode, but I'm kind of hoping that they're going to have Zack be a B team. Maybe instead of Tifa and Barrett and Red 13, you're going to have Biggs and Wedge and Jesse.
Oh my god, dude.
Yeah,
no way.
That'd be pretty cool. That'd be interesting. But
because in that scene, it was Tifa, Barrett, and Red who were all going into the ambulance.
Yeah. I don't know about Aerith. Was Aerith there? I feel like she was. I don't recall.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't remember either. We need to rewatch that.
Yeah. Nonetheless, clearly Remake and Rebirth, the Remake trilogy, is willing to play around with events and not only alter small things in the main timeline, but is also presenting an entirely different timeline as well, through Zack. So all of this has led to a question that has hung over everybody's heads as soon as we knew that it wasn't going to be a one-to-one remake, which is how are they going to do Aerith's death?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to talk about there. Because on the one hand, it's like it is the most famous scene in the game. Or infamous, maybe.
100%. Maybe even in like RPGs in general.
Yeah. But I think a good place to start is like let's analyze the scene itself. How much of it is like when we talk about its impact, it's like its infamy and like its inseparability from conversations around this game. How much of that is because of the shock when you play it the first time? You're not ready for it. You're not expecting it. And, Aerith, who's been with you for so long in the game, one of the first characters you get and who's built this bond with Cloud, like how much of it is just like the impact of not knowing it's coming? And how much of it is its actual impact on the story itself, separated just from your own emotional reaction?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good, that's the first distinction to make, I feel like, when you're thinking about the scene, because, the reason that she is there at all is to incite holy, right? Is to use the holy materia to defend against meteor.
Yeah.
Right? So, story-wise, that is why she's even there. That's why Sephiroth is killing her, so he can stop holy.
Yeah.
Right? So that, story-wise, it almost seemed like an inevitability. Mm-hmm. But there really is nothing like that emotional that, you were very connected to Aerith. She was like...
For Cloud and the player, like, not only is it the death of a friend, it is the advent of your enemy and also the death of hope for you. Because Holy was, like, your answer to that.
Yeah.
Like, now Sephiroth...
You just found out about Holy, too.
Yeah.
In the Temple of the Ancients.
And Cloud is the one who blew it. Like, he's the one who hands off the black materia. So,
Cloud blew it.
Yeah, and when Cloud looks at himself, like, he's blaming himself. And now Aerith, who, like, maybe the love interest, maybe not, depending on how you're playing it. Yep. If you're a real one, she is.
Nah, Tifa's better.
Yeah, nah. But, like, there's definitely, like, it is a narrative impactful scene. And it is the focal point of the story from then on. Because, like, everything else you do is for Aerith and making up for your mistakes and your failures in that moment. As well as revenge. Like, as if you didn't need it. But it's like, now it's personal for Cloud and the player. Because, like, now you're ready to just fuck Sephiroth up. So, like, I think that there's still weight there. But, like... part of it is this, it's a violent scene, both in like, the actual act of physical violence, but it's also taking the narrative and the rhythm that you've been in the game so far and like shaking it. It is like a sudden divergence for how things had been going. And knowing it's coming and like having had 20 years for that to, marinate, like, from a game dev perspective, it's like that's a scene where you could really, really play with players' expectations, knowing everybody already knows about it.
Yes. And I think that's kind of what is building up the anticipation for the scene. It's why that's a main point of the conversation, right? How are they going to redo this scene? Because there would be something dishonest about just creating another one-to-one scene where Sephiroth kills Aerith incites Holy, and then just it's the same thing again. There would be something not satisfying about that, right? Yeah. There needs to be a level of, there needs to be more explanation in it this time. Whereas before it was a simple concept that was, we understood why it was happening and why Sephiroth killed her. But at this point, if you're just going to leave it at that, that's not satisfactory to anyone, I don't think,
Yeah.
And so I don't see any way around the multiverse situation being tied to it.
I agree, 100%.
Right? There has to be some correlation with Zack in that scene, I think.
Yeah, because Zack, Cloud, Aerith, and Sephiroth are really the core characters of the story. Each one of them is inexorably linked to the other ones. So, like, having this situation play out again, but with the potential to have Zack involved somehow fundamentally changes the chemistry of the whole scene. So I feel like it would be disingenuous to not acknowledge that in game somehow.
Yeah.
And how to put this? I feel like it's the type of scene that's such a tentpole for the series and the identity of the franchise that like it has to be treated with respect. You can't screw with it too much or people will be mad.
Yeah.
But you also have to deliver on Remake being a fresh experience. Because the minute that you decide to remake Final Fantasy VII, like, and decide that it's not going to be a scene for scene, shot for shot remake, like this is the first one that I think everyone was like, all right, let's see.
Honest to God, this is where everyone's mind. And I would be surprised if that's not where Square's mind went.
Of course. I've seen like I think Nomura's played coy with it in a few like interviews. He's like, oh, you know, there's this one scene that I know a lot of people are looking forward to. You might be surprised.
And they've even mentioned that, you know, Rebirth is ending in the city of the city of Ancient. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's the logical place to end it too, because like
with that scene,
you either kill Aerith still, and like it's this dramatic cliffhanger of just like bum bum bum, like you know, and it'll be ballsy for you know these people who have never heard of what happens next, or you don't kill Aerith. Either someone else dies or nobody dies or the entire thing gets flipped on its head. You cut it there. And then everyone like us is just going to go fucking comatose until the next one comes in. Like, what am I going to do with that? Like, I don't even know.
Can you imagine a situation where Zack dies instead of Aerith? Can you imagine a situation where Aerith dies?
I mean, look.
It's kosher.
Zack fans, I would trade Zack for Aerith.
Yeah.
Zack is on the block. Like,
if I have the choice, Zack's getting there.
So, like, because Zack dies in the main timeline, I don't think that would have as much narrative impact as, say, Tifa. Like,
well, I mean, that's kind of
because that's the one that'll make players be like, ooh.
That's coming from the perspective of the OG.
Zack
is now a much larger part of the story. We don't know how yet, but he's a much larger part of the story. So what if there's a situation where Zack's death in the OG was somehow, you know, caused the events to happen? You know, like who's to say that they aren't going to throw something like that into the mix where Zack is actually this exterior force involved in this process, right?
Yeah. Well, see, there's certain things that like I don't think we're gonna understand until we get to see how the events play out.
Yeah.
Because like it seems to be implied that without Cloud, like the siege on Shinra fails, and that's why we see you know Zack or Red and Barrett and Tifa getting hauled away in ambulances and stuff like that, implied dead, and like. But we leave off with Zack surviving the fight on the cliff and carrying, you know, brain dead Cloud into Midgar. But the events don't match up. Like everything that happens in Shinra Tower is months and months after Zack dies originally. So, like, would he not have taken Cloud's place in Avalanche? Or I guess without Tifa as an introduction, perhaps not. But like, you know,
I get what you're saying.
For all of that to play out, still without Cloud and Zack, both of them would just have to be like chilling in Midgar.
I definitely.
So we'll have to see how they're playing that one out.
So what? Then the idea is that the scene where Zack is dragging Cloud back into Midgar, that would be like the start of the game again?
I would think so, but like it seems implied, at least to me, that Zack is not going to interact with the main party. Like they're either dead or they're just like they're fridged in Zack's timeline. So he's going to be working with a B team, or he's going to be on his own with just him and Cloud.
Yeah, just him and Cloud is kind of what I'm imagining. That'd
so I don't know how Zack could be involved with the City of the Ancient scene unless they merge the timelines at some point before that. And I have to believe that they're saving that for part 3 or like some major climax.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm going back to that trailer, that the reunion, and how Sephiroth mentions the fact that they're conjoining timelines with the reunion is, I mean, it's interesting, but I'm right there with you. I have a hard time imagining that being played out before Disc 3.
Yeah.
Well,
agreed.
Part 3, I guess. You know?
Yeah. So, and I think that's why, like, I think part 3 is going to be wild no matter what. Because, like...
That's going to be full of twists and turns.
Because, like, the post-Aerith part of Final Fantasy VII is really just the end game. Like, there's not a lot of further narrative. It's just conclusion after that point. Like, that is the high point. And then, you know, like...
What Rocket Town is after that, right?
No, so you've already met Sid. You have to go back to Rocket Town. But, like, you have the tiny...
for the huge materia.
Yeah,
right?
for the huge materia stuff. Because you already have the tiny Bronco and all that by
Gotcha,
that point.
yeah. Okay, yeah.
So, like, you go back to Rocket Town, Cloud, that's where you get your dunk in the life stream, and Tifa helps piece Cloud's.
And Medeal,
yeah. And then, you know, like, you jump back into Midgar, fight
Hojo.
Yeah, fight Hojo, Meteor, and all that stuff. So it's like, that's really the race to the finish at the end.
Sure.
So, like, and maybe this is, you know, if that's your favorite part of Final Fantasy VII, no offense. But, like, I feel like everything... You have Midgar, of course, but, like, everything else is building up to the City of the Ancients. Like, it's all for that. Yeah. And then, you know, everything after that is just kind of like it's the end of the game.
Right.
So
you're preparing to go to the Northern Grid.
So if there is one part of the game that they would probably feel the most comfortable with, or maybe that's just me disguising that I would feel the most comfortable with them changing, would be that post-Aerith stuff. So, like, as far as I'm considered, that's a blank slate. Like, regardless of what they do with the Aerith.
They would need to keep the Medeal situation in, because that's where the Cloud discovers.
Yeah,
right?
they need to keep Medeal, and, like, that whole reveal, like, that's critical to all of it. And, like, the ultimate fight with Sephiroth will be the same. And, like, I still feel like the climactic scene in Remake, where, like, it's just Cloud versus Sephiroth on that floating rock with the crazy flower cloud. Like...
Oh my god, dude, the music, dude.
Yeah, that was
remake,
pretty dope.
Dude, in Remake, all the songs in Remake were maybe not all of them, but you know they were phenomenal remasters of these songs, and I cannot wait to see.
I have to say, I really appreciate I just played through Remake again, most of it. I stopped right before President Shinra just because I got distracted. Sure. But it's like they really got a lot of mileage out of those existing leitmotifs. Like,
oh yeah.
Like they did Those Who Fight and like the overworld theme.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All
but
of them.
like. They have a different, like, you know, version of Bombing Mission or a different version of, you know, the overworld theme for every place you go. And they're all distinct and interesting and thematic. Yeah. So, like, if there's one thing I have complete and utter faith in, like, the soundtrack is going to be banging no matter what happens.
Yeah. I mean, it's just going to be... People have been saying it since the beginning of Remake. Since Remake was even announced, you know, it's like... the potential of multiple timelines, how that could be an issue. But we were talking off screen about other games that were, you know, have accomplished this kind of multiple timeline situation. Yeah. And, like, there's definitely paths that could be taken to keep the game honest in its integrity while being not a disgrace. Yeah.
No, I agree. And, like, Square Enix themselves have threaded the needle here. I mean, like... Yeah. Both Bravely Default and Chrono Trigger are both Square Enix properties. Like, you know, in-house, they've managed to nail this. So, like, you know, I have faith that they can do this. It's just more a matter of, like, what the approach is. You know, from a multiverse perspective, like, is this two universes? Is this, like, a loop where things change? Like, is it a real multiverse? Like... Yeah. Are we going to be having an Omni Slash where like 18 clouds are coming out of it? Like, that'd be neat.
Yeah.
But
Dude, Knights of the Round is actually every one of them is just Cloud.
that is the deepest Final Fantasy VII theory. Like, go post that on Game FAQs. Like,
every night is Cloud.
Someone call Matt Pat. Game theory. Knights of the Round is all Cloud from different timelines.
Do you think people would be happy with a situation where Aerith doesn't die? Do you think that would be a... Do you think there are I mean, there's always going to be those purists, right? Who's like, Aerith needs to die, or else, or else it's not, like, honest to itself.
I'm struggling to think of an example on the spot. But that's, like, the type of game where, like, there are multiple endings, and, like, all of them are different shades of, like, we got as good as we could. But then there's the one true ending, like the good ending, like the hardest one to get, where maybe everybody lives. Like, okay. I cannot think of one. I know I'm going to think of one as soon as we wrap this podcast. I'm going to feel like an idiot.
No, I get you. I get exactly what you're saying, though. I get what you're
like,
saying.
I think that it's not impossible to do so. It just can't be cheap. Like, you can't just give it to us and, like, suddenly it's a happy ending. Because, like, part of Final Fantasy VII's identity is its kind of ambiguously bittersweet ending. Like, even if you don't look at Advent Children and all that, like...
Yeah, you don't really know what happens at the end, right? The final scene is just Sephiroth and Cloud. Cloud gets the final hit, and you assume Sephiroth is defeated.
Yeah, it cuts, and then, like, at the end of the credits, it's just, like, 10 billion years later. Yeah. Like, Midgar is just a crappy memory. Yeah. So, like, but we have no proof that humanity even survives the meteor event. Like, except for Advent Children, but...
Yeah, I mean, is that canon?
Does it have to be? Sorry, Advent Children fan, singular. But,
yeah, and I mean, I guess another thing we didn't really touch on is the fact that, I mean, in the original, Aerith was going back to the life stream when she died, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that obviously had to have some effect, you would think.
It kind of seems like that has to happen.
Yeah.
Like, her fusing with the life stream and becoming its avatar allows her to, like, successfully repel Meteor in a way that maybe it couldn't have happened if Aerith was still alive. So, like, maybe Sephiroth is like, actually, I'm going to keep Aerith alive as fuck so she can't stop this.
She can't do it, yeah.
Yeah, like, maybe Sephiroth is going to be the one playing with this.
Maybe Zack is the one that needs to die in this timeline.
But Zack died in the original timeline, too.
Man, why couldn't it have been one or the other, or both? Maybe they both need to.
I mean, I assume, Aerith, you could say it's because she's an ancient. You could say it's because she's like the priestess archetype or whatever. Like, she hears the voice of the planet. Like, as the last ancient, I always got the impression that, like, she was the one to do this. And then even in, once again, Advent Children, like, it is Aerith, specifically, within the life stream, that cures geostigma.
Yeah.
Spoilers for Advent Children.
We're not going to give spoiler warnings for that one.
But
watch at your own risk.
Yeah, we should take our own advice there. But yeah, no, I mean, like, I think that there are a lot of interesting ways that you could play this, but there would also be a lot of really unsatisfying ways to play it.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't think, like, Zack is only a substitute for Aerith in this scene, in my eyes, based on popularity alone. Like, I think his effectiveness in the story and, like, his effectiveness on Cloud. I mean, I feel like if Cloud is confronted with Zack before the right time after Mediel, he's going to have a mental breakdown. So, that, I don't know how much he would care in the moment because he would be comatose. Like, I think, like, the only way to break Cloud the way that he broke after Aerith without killing Aerith and putting her in the live stream would be to kill Tifa. Like, I don't think any other party member could fill that same niche.
Tifa?
Yeah. I think that, like, she's the one that put Cloud back together again. So maybe, let's theory craft. Let's come up with, like, an imaginary scenario here. Like, say we make it to the Temple of the Ancients, and Sephiroth, like, he's mind-controlling Cloud. Cloud almost kills Aerith, but doesn't. And, he puts it away. Sephiroth comes down from the rafters, but he doesn't kill Aerith. He kills Tifa instead and, like, kidnaps Aerith. And he's just like, ha, no holy for you.
Interesting, okay.
And it's all your fault, Cloud. Stupid. Cloud's like, I'm not stupid. And also my childhood best friend is dead. The only person who consistently stuck up for Cloud throughout the entire game is Tifa. Like, she introduced him to all of his new friends. He was like, she was his light throughout his entire childhood. And she was the only one that still believed in him when he was completely shattered and in that wheelchair and stuff.
Yeah.
Sephiroth's goal is to have Cloud as mentally weak as possible so that he could exert control over him and make him a willing puppet to the reunion thing.
Yeah.
Getting rid of his number one biggest support net in Tifa and still taking Aerith off the board without giving her the power, the Force Ghost style, like strike me down and I'll be more powerful than ever. You have basically crippled Cloud without the chance of recovery. Maybe that's where Zack comes in.
Interesting. Taking away Tifa.
But that's why I feel like it's got to be a multiverse thing, because like no one will take no more Tifa lying down. So
yeah, she's like. She's the one that pumps the stagger meter, right?
Well, hey, you don't know what Sid's gonna do, man.
Yeah,
you don't know about Sid.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Sid is Sid even gonna be in this one.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I think Sid and Vincent are part 3.
No, Vincent. Well, he's
gonna be like Red 13. He's gonna be there as like a striker, but not playable.
Can't control him. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So what I'm stabbing at here, is like how do you keep the Aerith dies scene fresh while staying true to the spirit of the scene?
Yeah,
someone's gotta die. How do you make that hold weight with the players and the narrative without it being predictable, but also allowing the story to still basically land in the same place?
Yeah.
Killing Barrett's not going to do that.
That's the ultimate tightrope to walk. And then, we talk about the emotional impact of Aerith dying, but I didn't feel that as much when you see Barrett, Tifa, and Red under the blankets, right? Getting into the end. I didn't feel that, like, oh man, like, this is, like, we lost them, Well, there's definitely not that weight.
That was, because that's in a trailer, it doesn't feel like, I'm not in the story at the time. Like, I'm not, like, there, I'm not playing.
You don't have Aerith in 1 minute and then not,
I didn't feel like, oh no, like, I've lost them. It's more like, what's going on here? This has got to be an alternate timeline or like a vision or something. I was more confused and curious than I was like, no way that just happened the way it was with Aerith originally.
The way you watch Aerith get stabbed,
Yeah. So, because it is such a central, like, pillar to the story, like, that scene has to remain. Like, it does. It's a fixed point. It is for the Spider-Verse fans, a canon event. So, like...
But, it has to be the same, but it has to be different.
Exactly.
It has to be different. It is, yes. I think that is the final piece of the puzzle that once we know how it's going to play out, that will decide on how this game is. Right? Yeah.
That's the divergent point.
Yeah. Because I think once that is set in stone, we'll live with if the final fight against Safer Sephiroth is different. We'll live if the Northern Crater is a different situation. Totally okay. I think. I think that is going to be the ultimate telltale sign of whether or not this game is going to be a success. I think.
Yeah, and I think safe money is on that. Happening at the end of this game that's coming out in February.
Yeah.
So. That is going to be a race to the finish because the internet is going to explode.
Oh my god!
That's going to be
spoilers.
That's going to be crazy. So stay off the internet and just bum rush that game.
Oh my god! Yeah,
that's going to be wild.
Because every Aerith spoiler is just going to be doubled down on now with Aerith spoilers 2.0.
Yeah. No, there's going to be no getting away from it. I'm honestly afraid of even people who have a pre-release of the game. Nothing's going to be safe.
Yeah, that's so true. I wonder, because
all eyes are on that scene.
All the content creators who got to play through parts of Rebirth in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Yeah, who's to say that they're not going to get some sort of